Hey guys, my name's Khadroth, and today I wanted to actually talk about the backgrounds in the Akihabara event. This is something that we knew at the time when it was coming out on JP, but it was a lot more speculative back then, and I think it's a really cool thing to actually cover for you guys here on NA. One, for nostalgia purposes, and two, to kind of enlighten some people that didn't realize this was a thing. So, as you guys can see on screen, this is one of the many backgrounds for the Akihabara event. In fact, most of them are relatively mundane. You maybe can spot something that I didn't notice, but largely there's not too much here, right? And interestingly enough, you might see some references to arcade, or maybe even like right here, possibly and potentially some kind of like PvP type situation, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. I don't think any of that necessarily is going to be the case. I think, again, we've talked about this before on stream, but the devs didn't mention PvP as of the most recent anniversary interview at all. So I think that is kind of at least shelved for right now. And I don't think you have to worry about seeing it until they start talking about it at some point in the future, should they. But again, I think this was a big thing as they wanted to kind of hype up arcade. But this is just the first slide of many. Again, you've got the maid cafe here. I really don't think there's any references whatsoever in this one. I tried looking at some of the pictures. I don't think there was anything here really to work out on. And you guys will see there is a point here that I'm trying to get to. Again, you've got the workshop here. Again, sort of like general store with some sort of tchotchkes and stuff in the crates and everything. But really nothing too much going on here in terms of references as far as I can tell. Then we go into the sort of sculptor's workshop here, and you can see actually there is Paris here in the background. You do have Asclepius and you do have Europa, but outside of that, again, I don't really feel like there was too much going on in this one. We start getting to the hallway here. There's a little bit more, and I'm actually going to not talk about some of these because we will talk about that here in a minute. But outside of the blatant self-advertising for Fate Grand Order, they definitely had stuff like over here for Bedivere, where, you know, again, at the time, I actually believe Camelot was either out or at least getting hyped. I think the first movie had come out and they were on their way to the second movie. And I remember actually talking about this at the time, saying, why aren't they actually doing more for the Camelot movies? Where's our campaigns? Because at the time, I think all they had really done was given Bedivere a butler costume, and that was it. That was the only mention, like in-game, like collaboration-wise, with the Camelot movies. And it seemed really weird to me how much they did for Babylonia, but how they just kind of dropped the ball on Camelot, which is a big reason why I think the perception overall for it was not nearly as good, as it really wasn't hyped up at all. And a lot of people went into it kind of, you know, with nothing really to look forward to. And I think they kind of came out of it, especially that first movie, leaving kind of thinking that there wasn't really a lot there and that so much had gotten stripped out of it. Certainly, I watched the second movie and thought it was a lot better, but at the point in time that this event came out, we didn't have that. We didn't have the Camelot campaigns yet, and it was only after this point that we got the Camelot Grail Front, as well as the sort of like pre-campaign for that with like the Aussie banner and Sanzang banner and stuff like that. That really helped turn things around for it, but yeah, I criticized it at the time as this being a sort of just whiff on their part. Again, obviously, you see some sort of magazine covers over here on the right side, and then you see the typical Umu propaganda over here on the right, which again is being covered by Aurelia right now, but really not too much you guys got to talk about. Now, again, then we get to the hobby shop here, and things get a little bit more interesting here. So realistically, there's actually a lot in this picture, but most of it is just references to other Fate and Nasu work type stuff. I don't think there's really too much to actually go off of this. But the one thing I can point to and say is you do have prominently figured a very nice Okitan statue. And that's going to set the stage for a theme here, because I feel like this was a reference to Okitan Summer coming out later this year. This is, I think, a really intriguing thing to me that they showed the statue off. And you might be thinking, well, Cad, you're surely high on copium right now. You know, this is just an Okitan statue. They just put her in here to put her in here. Well, let this be just, again, the beginning to that speculation as we go to the final slide. This is the big slide in all of Akihabara. There is so much in this slide, in this background that they had for the event, that all I can really say is it just absolutely teased the crap out of so much stuff most people didn't even realize. Even at the time we realized this was probably something giving us a lot of hints, we weren't big brain enough to comprehend enough of it. A lot of the stuff in here, especially, was really well layered, because a lot of us, like, for instance, if you just look at the page at the beginning here, you just see like, oh, hey, here's Watanabe no Suna and Ibaraki. And, you know, they even appear in the event. And so surely, you know, maybe at worst, this is like a 5.5 reference, right? Fair enough. In fact, at the time, this was the year of the taiga on JP. So we did have a lot of potential hype for that. And then certainly you saw, hey, Doman up here, right? And you're thinking like, oh, yeah, you know, it's Doman. That's more 5.5 stuff. Same thing with Ibuki, right? What if I told you that's not true? That there's a lot more here than meets the eye. So, for instance, just going across the top up here in the background, you've got Artemis, LB6, and potentially Carnimus again here. Or is it? We don't know. This is one of those deals where you've got Vitra showing up, and then you've got, oh, who's that? The arcade Santa servant, Suzuka? Yeah, she would be another one where, okay, well, why is arcade showing up here? Maybe they're just typing arcade, right? Surely that's all they're doing. Well, you may be right. Maybe. But who knows? Maybe some of this stuff hasn't come to pass yet. And that's something I want you guys to keep in the back of your head as you're watching all the references that I point out here. Because again, right up here at the top as well is a Little Big Tengu. So they covered some of the stuff that had come out just before Akihabara Explosion. But there's other references here. Things that are too coincidental to be true. Or sorry, too true to be a coincidence is rather what I should say. For instance, right here is Brynhildr. And Brynhildr's next banner this year is the Lotto upcoming. So this predicted the rerun of Grand Nero Fest. So a lot of people would tell you Grand Nero Fest isn't a true rerun, but it is a true rerun, but it isn't a true rerun. The whole point was it was an old event that got repurposed, partially to coincide with the Olympic Games being in Tokyo that year, but also because I think they just realized this was a good sort of way to tie into real life situation, but also bring back an easy lotto event where in the thick of LB6 going on and them having to prep for all of that, they wouldn't have to do nearly as much work. So this teased Brynhildr. Similarly, up here, you have Shufu, another unit that a lot of people speculated was to come, and certainly did end up coming to fruition. Not this year, though. Next year. So this foretold Shufu into the future. So now, understand that this isn't all just dealing with this year. In fact, there's some stuff that comes from the next year on JP. How do we know that? Well, let's start looking in the middle here. You have Nemo. Why is Nemo getting highlighted? Maybe this is an allusion back to even Imaginary Scramble. Or maybe this is Noah on arcade. Huh. That's an interesting one. Because right next to Nemo is a female Merlin with faux ears and suit. Almost like Lady Avalon. A lot of people at the time were assuming this was Magi Marie. And it may well be. But damn, if that's not a coincidence, I don't know what is. Because that certainly foretells Lady Avalon coming out not only on arcade, but actual mobile as well. So literally back-to-back years here, we ended up having that be a thing. And again, you can see more of the taiga symbology here with a lot of the magazine covers, but you're noticeably not seeing it necessarily in some other cases, and I find that really intriguing. Maybe that's just pure design aesthetic that they went with, but it's a really curious thing to see how they kind of use it and don't use it. Similarly, right here, you guys can actually see, well, maybe Ibuki, like we talked about before, is a 5.5 reference. But she's being nagged at by Summer Raiko. Almost like this is foretelling Summer Ibuki. And now is the point where I'm going to draw your attention back to Doman. Maybe Doman isn't a 5.5 reference, because Doman is involved in the current upcoming summer event, as well as the summer event JP just had last year. Back-to-back summer events Doman is involved in. And I find that really interesting, considering who all's in this list. So, video is false, no made Fran yet? Don't worry about that. I'm going to cover that. So, for instance, right here, I could maybe say this is another arcade reference to Umu, aka to our Beast 666 on arcade, which would be a really, really interesting thing. But then, why Kama? Well, because Kama Summer this year. So all of this was getting sort of foretold by this background right here. Similarly, yeah, why no maid Fran or you know, suited up Mordred? Well, I personally hope we get those as costumes, but regardless of that, you know what's also interesting? What's this in the background back here? Almost like that Surf Mo again. In fact, hey, look at that. That's Summer Astolfo up there. And then there's Fran and Mordred again. It's almost like they were foretelling the Summer Apocrypha banners that were going to happen towards the end of the year. And I find that another interesting case. And it doesn't just stop there. Down here, you also have Himiko. Well, Himiko hasn't really had anything go on, but what about Io? Doesn't stop there either. Bottom right corner over here, Isui from Melty Blood, which at the time was not released. So the rest of it, as far as I can tell, Alexander and Mama Raiko herself up here, not really anything going on as far as I know of. But there's one other thing I didn't point out here. And that's right here, which is Summer Scotty. So again, this background at the time was a roadmap. It wasn't just hints. It was giving us so much future knowledge and information as to what was to come that it's crazy to think about what else we might have missed, what else they might tease, what else they may have, you know, snuck past us at times. Because at the time we recognized this as potentially full of hints, but we couldn't comprehend what it was. So maybe we should start looking at other backgrounds with a similar discerning eye. And maybe we should start looking at other events to see, have the devs given us any other clues at times? Because again, they did a lot here. Not even just for the current upcoming year, but into the next year after that. And like I said, there's still at least one unanswered reference as far as I'm concerned. So who knows? Who knows what we could be getting? What do you guys think? When do you guys think we'll see some of the missing units in here? When do you think we'll see, again, some of the other stuff that maybe wasn't utilized? I'll be curious to know. Let me know what you guys think down below, and I'll see you guys for the next one.